Hi, fellow travelers. Thanks for tuning in. This is Sandra, founder of Journey to Authentic Living, with another JTAL video. I'd like to open a discussion about ego because almost every day on social media platforms, I see in circulation posts and quotes that highlight the negative aspects of ego as though ego were a plague or some form of disease. The reason I use these words negative aspect is because ego also has a positive and very necessary aspect to it, and I'll explain here in a little bit. So I was brought up between Catholicism, Protestant churches, and spiritualism, and especially in the late 1970s and early 80s, the spiritualist church. And actually the New Age movement birthed from this, spiritualism. When my mother took me to these spiritualist churches, the focus was on angels, building intuition, getting in touch with your higher self, love of humanity. They talked about past lives, a little bit of karma and so forth. But ego was not demonized. They did teach you to distinguish between ego getting in the way of one's intuition, but again, never really highlighting these aspects of removing it or getting rid of ego. There are some very accomplished spiritual writers that have published books that allude to raising your vibration or becoming more a spiritual individual through getting rid of or removing ego, thus creating followers that embrace a certain belief that leads to what I'm talking about right now. So allow me to demystify something. You cannot get rid of ego. Ego is built into human existence, into the human experience. And ego is multidimensional. So what is ego? Since there is plenty to say about ego, and this discussion is really not a dissertation on it, I will describe as plainly as possible in 3 definitions. 1, ego is a person's sense of self-esteem, of self-importance. Maybe this falls into the category in the negative way of ego when we say she or he has an inflated ego, because it is a person's sense, that is to say, a person's own perception of self-importance. This is how we also then perceive people incorrectly or correctly when we experience arrogance from them, because they think a certain way about themselves, thus behaving as self-entitled or snobbishly, for example. As you can hear, one can assume a not so healthy aspect of ego. Ego in this category can sway destructively and or for well-being. If a person lacks self-esteem or self-respect, how do you think they're going to build it? Like with what material? Well, they build it with ego. So you can see the function of ego in this sense. The second interpretation of ego is in psychology. And psychology says that ego is part of the mind that mediates between consciousness and unconsciousness. It's responsible for our reality as we know it. If not, we'd be literally bumping into walls and into each other. It's also responsible for a sense of self-identity, that is the I am, I feel. But again, keep in mind the word perception, because our reality is our perception, in good or bad, negative or positive. So again, you'll see how this is functioning. The last definition is ego in philosophy, and ego is a conscious thinking mind, according to philosophy, a place to gather information and knowledge so then it can express itself. Kind of what I'm doing right now with all of you through creating this video. instead of believing that ego is bad and that we need to let it go, remove it as it were a disease, disassociate ourselves from ego, and especially other people who may have ego. I'd like to propose learning how to build a healthy ego and recognize when ego is reacting from its wounds, as in our insecurities, for example. I propose understanding what ego is and how it manifests in our life. You know, knowing how it manifests is important, rather than punishing ourselves when we clearly are not comprehending the correct use of ego. It's also important to understand ego, of the how and when to use it, because it can be a very healthy tool for navigating our inner lives. I invite all of you to think about this or contemplate a little bit about what you think ego is, or what your definition of ego was. Any comments or experiences that you would like to share with us, we really welcome all of them. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I would love for your participation and any suggestions that you may have. If you want to private message me, please do so. And in the meantime, think about it. What is ego? Just don't read a book or an article or listen to somebody who may or may not know, what ego is. It's really not always a bad thing. And let's take a look at ego as something that we can really utilize to become healthy and well. We need it for our personal development every time we achieve something or meet a goal, right? So let's put ego in its right perspective and not fear it. So inviting all of you again to comment and wishing you a absolutely blessed journey. Thank you for watching.